all in one place. So of course they want it all, right? They want it all. And which makes sense, as you know, as time has gone, everyone's expectations have gone up, and that just includes Airbnbs now. So people want this. People like to travel this, and it's not just for, you know, like myself, I'm a millennial, but it's not just for millennials. Airbnb has a saying now that it's an Airbnb for everybody. So they're doing a real push that, you know, grandma's going to say, hey, let's go get an Airbnb rather than let's stay at the hotel. And it's become a true kind of the go-to for a lot of people. You'll hear, obviously, people my age, but other people say, hey, did you check out on Airbnb? You know, what they have there, before even going to any of the hotels. So it's very interesting to see that shift in demand. And so we need to make sure that we're meeting that demand with the supply, right? And quality supply. That's one negative that the industry has gotten, is that it's so disparate that there's no standardization of quality. And that's something that a lot of, you know, myself and other professional managers are looking to do, is to, you know, guarantee that quality, you know, throughout our portfolio. So when somebody books with us, they know that they're going to have, it's going to be clean. They're going to have the nice sheets, right? Everything that you get in a hotel, and then some. So you kind of build on top of that. And then also, you know, second point of, you know, why does this matter for you, the apartment owners, is you now can have a way to, you know, differentiate and be unique within your space, especially if you start becoming an early adopter to this, or if you're not in a, you know, say you're not in New York or Miami or some large tier city, you're able to have this unique offering to both, obviously, the guests and the end user, but you also can offer this to your tenants, you know, especially, again, my generation, you know, this is a value add, right? Especially if you have good operators that are working with you and are, you know, it's contributing to your community and your culture of your building. You know, it can be a great offering, as, you know, your tenants can have their family stay there, or, you know, what they like to say, you'll try before you buy. So you can use it as, you know, a marketing tool for yourself and for your staff. So there's all kind of really good additions that you can have within, you know, within your own building. And so recently there was a study done by the National Multifamily Housing Council that said 65% of recent Airbnb bookings were in multifamily buildings. So it's a huge trend. But then on the opposite of that, 43% of property managers of multifamily buildings said that there was Airbnbs within their building that they either, you know, did not know of, or it's against their lease agreement. So kind of staring, you know, short-term rentals in the face and saying, okay, this is an opportunity for me, and also can help you gain control of your own building, because you don't know what sort of people are coming in if you guys aren't on the forefront of it, right? You're kind of leaving that up to your own tenants, which might not be the same service provided that you can create, or partnering with a third-party manager can do and provide for you. So it's adding that sort of, you know, making sure that you're taking control of the situation there, because it's happening. It is absolutely happening. And, you know, some of the apartment owners that, you know, my company works within, they came to me and said, hey, we have people within our building, you know, how do we get control of that before we start with your units, right? So it's something that you definitely have to think about and build out. And then lastly, obviously, why we're all here, you know, there's money to be made, right? And that's kind of the, you know, the biggest why for people. Why would I go through all this extra work, extra time, besides the cultural and the demand side? It's like, you know, how's it going to help me? Well, there's great upside, obviously, to both, you know, being within it and working it. So Airbnbs sometimes they can generate up to 3 times your normal rent. So, you know, if your long-term rent, stay within your market, just for easy math, you know, you got $1,000 rent, you're looking at $3,000 gross potential income for a similar unit. So you can see why people are looking to add these to their building. And also, we're going to go through all the different strategies on how to do it, but you can also lease up more buildings, or lease up more units. Units aren't sitting vacant. So all of those things increase the value of your building, and your monthly gross potential income all are increasing by adding these sorts of features and making the investment in short-term rentals. So it's very obviously the biggest reason why we're all here and why we wanted to learn about it and what to do is because there's great money to be made and built upon. So just want to make sure, Danny, as we're going through, if there's any questions, guys, feel free to step in and make sure to ask your questions if you have any, because right now we're going through a lot of different things. So make sure that you're asking your questions anytime I can stop and take a breath and help you guys with any questions you have. So realistically, there's a couple strategies that we can do or you can do when you're wanting. So you make the decision, you say, okay, great, I want to do this and put this in my building, but the next biggest question is how, right? So how is this going to help me? How am I going to implement it? And how can I do this, right? And all of these strategies are geared towards increasing your top line revenue. And obviously, if you're increasing your top line revenue and you're taking care of your expenses as you obviously should be doing, this is going to boost your NOI, thus boosting the value of your building, which helps you in no matter if you're holding it 3, 5, whatever what your hold period is. This is going to help you as you grow your own portfolio. Whether you're utilizing the cash flow, the monthly cash flow, that's what you're interested in, or you're looking for an IRR pop in your 5-year sale, whatever it is, this can help you grow and be a mainstay in your part. So there's a couple different models that are utilized. And the first one, and what I'll go through the models and also some of the pros and cons that are within each model. And you can kind of take from that as what you will and what makes sense for you and your investing strategy. So the first one that I like to mention because it's the simplest and the easiest known, and it comes with the least amount of work towards you, the owner. And that's the corporate lease model. So this has been around for a while and people understand this. Banks understand this. That's one of the biggest things, financing piece, but banks understand when you say corporate lease model or a corporate lease compared to saying an Airbnb, they react much differently. So people understand the corporate lease model, and what that is you rent out 1, 3, 5, a whole floor, whatever it is, and also whatever makes sense in your financing, you rent that out to an Airbnb operator. Okay, so like myself, I have a company as well that we do similar models where we'll do a corporate rental lease or whatever within your building. So they guarantee your lease every single month, just like a typical tenant. The lease looks similar, and you're allowing them the right to sublet within your building. So that gives them the right to Airbnb. So you sign all these leases, and that helps you. Obviously, it helps you during lease up, especially if you have a brand new building. If you're a developer and you're going through lease up, there's a company called Y Hotel who actually will help apartment owners, brand new apartment owners, cut their lease up time by taking a whole floor or the whole building or a big chunk of the building and turning them all into Airbnbs during that lease up period. And that period where developers typically are underwriting essentially $0 in income. Y Hotel for their first project added $1 million NOI to the developers, obviously P&L, by adding this model to them. So it's a great way to help close that gap on your lease up or bring that building over that hump of stabilization right? Which you're looking to get to, because you're leasing, a block of buildings to one person. So obviously that's great. You can lease up quickly. And the corporate rental client, some pros, they're handling the furniture, they're handling the utilities, right? And they're kind of taking care of every single aspect of it during the whole process, right? So they're taking care of all of it. You don't really need to think about it. All you know is, or all you're worried about is, are they taking care of it? Are they being good stewards and good neighbors? But you're not having to worry about when they're booking, how they're booking, anything like that. So really, you get to stay in your core competency of renting your units, owning the building. Exactly. So you can move, you can stay, like you say, stay in your lane, right? And everybody's kind of winning there. But some downsides, obviously, you don't have the upside, right? So that's kind of what I always tell people is, who wants to hold the risk, right? And that's whoever holds the risk gets to also hold the upside. So we all kind of understand the idea of risk in this group. So I don't need to harp on that. But if you're getting your guaranteed rent every single month, the operator is kind of what we call, a little rental arbitrage. They're looking to, make that difference off of what they can rent it for on Airbnb compared to what their monthly payment is. So they get to play out that difference. You get your rent. Everybody's kind of incentivized to keep the relationship going. Now, another negative is you now have, X percent of your building is now rented to one person. So you have to trust that company, trust that they're not going to default, right? That's kind of the biggest concern. If you have let's just, for example, say you have a 20-unit apartment and it's leased to 20 people, it's, the likelihood of all 20 of them defaulting in 1 month is, slim to none. But if you have, the whole thing's rented to one person, your risk of default goes higher if there's a bad month or the company folds, whatever, sort of risk you can see. That's kind of a, con that comes with that model. So you're having to make sure that you're finding and vetting who comes to you with these opportunities, and, know that they have a track record of success. Now, that's not to say, because new companies are starting up all the time, like I mentioned before, but you have to make sure that you're doing your due diligence on, who you're putting in your building. And I don't think I need to harp on that with you guys. Now, the next model that they have, again, is shifting the risk more towards the apartment owner, but also shifting the upside is a percent of management, which everybody understands from long-term, or we can call it a revenue share model. Now, obviously, this is increasing your gross potential income of the building. So if it's being operated correctly, your upside is way greater. So you're going to see that boost in NOI, which is obviously the positive that we're looking for. So some of the pros is majority of the revenue is obviously sent to the owner. You'll see a bunch of different models out there, anywhere from 80-20, 75-25, anywhere above or below. You'll see some of the differences. It's obviously more expensive than, say, your typical property manager, which might be anywhere from 6 to 10%, right? But you're going to see higher percentage of management because it's more operationally intensive. So the operator or the manager is dealing with the cleanings, linens, guests, all of those things. You don't have to worry about that in a revenue share or percent management model. But you get to also have that upside of that 80, 75%, whatever it is. You get to see that increase. So if they're, say your typical rent, going back to our original example, is $1,000 is your typical rent, and then your manager is bringing in, $3,000, you can see how that growth, 80% of 3,000 is much more than 100% of 1,000, obviously. So it's great. Now, Again, in this model, it's very similar. You get to focus on your core competencies. You're not having to worry about all of the operational things that come with, running an Airbnb and a short-term rental. So that's a huge positive. And again, same with your, less so with the corporate rental, but something that you can offer is you can now present this to your tenants as a value add to them being in the building. So a huge piece that we do as a company is we'll offer discounts to tenants within the building if they want to rent the units. So if they have family coming in town or friends, whatever, you're able to say, hey, tenant, have your friends and family stay with us within the building. They can be close, and people love that. And that's kind of really the ethos of Airbnb, is being able to have everybody together and in one place. So you get to add that as a huge value add to your apartment, your apartment tenants. So really, really cool and a great value add. Now, some of the cons, you're going to have to, what I always kind of joke is, you're going to have to be willing to stomach riding the waves, because depending on your market, you're going to have some high seasons, you're going to have some low seasons. So you're going to have to be able to ride the ups and downs in your rental income. So some months you might be below what you typically get. But then also, here in Charlotte, I'm based out of Charlotte, our typical down months are January, February, and we're in an urban market, so it's a little more consistent across the year. But January, February, I kind of prep all my clients, say, listen, these are the lower occupancy months, thus the lower revenue. So you have to be ready and be smart with your cash flow to help ride out those different ones. But obviously, on the whole year, the highs outweigh the lows, and that's kind of what you're weighing as an operator, if those highs and lows are outweighed to you. So that's one thing. Another piece, a potential con in this, is you're having to cover the cost of furniture. Depending on your unit, you're looking at, say, for easy round numbers, around $5,000 per bedroom is a good moniker to go off of. So you're having to cover that cost. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a pro at designing or anything like that. There's companies that will do that. A lot of property management companies like myself will help facilitate that, but you're still having to cover that cost because you're seeing the upside, like we talked about before. Whoever sees the upside has to cover those costs. And you have to, again, just like when you're vetting a property manager for yourself, you have to vet and find a quality third-party property manager. So that kind of gets fallen on you, obviously, but it's very important that you're finding somebody with experience and who knows what they're doing. So one, you make sure that good people are going into your units, and good people as in guests, good guests. You want to make sure that is, because it only takes one bad apple to ruin the whole pie. And then you also want to make sure that they're also good at, driving bookings. So that's a huge piece, and really harping on revenue management. Revenue management is a big piece that's growing within our industry. It's huge in the hotel markets, where they're making sure to, you're forecasting ahead, and you're looking and you're seeing, okay, I have, 5 days that are open in the next 30 days. Let me go mess with those rates, drop them down 5% or 10% because I want to help boost my monthly gross. So I want to be able to, I'm okay with moving my rates to help make sure I'm securing bookings, because you don't want to be giving away the farm, but an empty room doesn't make anybody money. So it's fine being able to find something that has that balance. Now the last model, and it's obviously, I've been kind of going in intensiveness, is you can bring it all in-house, right? So this is obviously the most labor intensive for you as an owner, because you're having to really set up all the systems and the processes and have another company within your company that's focused on short-term rentals. So great pros is just that you have all the control, right? So you have all the control, you have all the financial upside, you can create whatever brand you want, you can have that direct access and can sell it to your current tenants however you'd like, right? And it can be an extra line item for yourself. But obviously some obvious cons to this is you're having to invest in being a short-term rental and a hospitality expert. So you're having to hire the talent, right? Because you probably won't have, it's different. There's different skills, compared to your property manager that you may have on site or off site, whatever it is. They're usually a little different, and sometimes you want to keep the two separate. You're having to implement and invest the technology that you need to help run it effectively and easily. Honestly, you want to be staying on the forefront of that, because that's a huge piece that's coming into the industry, is the advent of more technology to help help managers grow and build their businesses and make it really easy to help manage and do it. So you're having to do all of that. You're having to create the supply chain, do all of those pieces and build that out. And also it's a 24/7 business. So you're getting the calls at 2 a.m. if something's going wrong. You're helping if somebody loses the code or loses their key or gets locked out, you're getting those calls, right? So you have to be ready to build those in and build out those systems. And then finally, it could potentially be a distraction from your original goals as an investor or an owner, because the property management time goes way up with an Airbnb. So that added time may distract, because we only have a certain amount of time in the day. So that added time may take away from, what you can be doing on other things. So a small portion of your building, maybe say you decide to do five units, maybe that's taking up the same time to run, 10, 15, 20 of your other units. So what's that time to cost ratio to you? And that's something obviously we can't figure out for you, but you have to look at what you're doing and what your goals are and how you can help and what makes sense for you. So those are kind of some of the three major and most commonly implemented strategies that people can do. So those are some of the easiest ways that you can do it. And I see that we have some questions that we have coming on here. How do the new regulations and laws limiting the duration you can do for short-term rentals within a calendar year affect the short-term strategy? So answer this a little bit earlier, but it's going to honestly dictate everything that you do, because like I mentioned, I look at the bylaws of an apartment or a building or a condo before I even work with a client, because you want to stay above board, because you are going to have to make an investment in furniture, in whether it's people, whether it's time, whatever it is, you're going to make an investment to build out an Airbnb or a short-term rental. So you want to make sure that you're either underwriting those regulations of the days available, or you're willing to say no and passing on it if you think it's going to be too restrictive or too much work and the juice isn't going to be worth the squeeze. So you're going to have to make sure that you are looking into those and really taking advantage of that. Another question, this is from Alex. What's a book you can recommend to learn the systems of a PM and or a short-term rental? So one I just read is, the author's eluding me, but Optimize Your Airbnb. That's a really good one. Very comprehensive and shows, kind of walks you through, really hand-holding you on how to do it and how to set up the correct systems. Now, it's really not, I'd say that it's not geared towards a scalable model and having multiple listings, but it helps build the framework. So Optimize Your Airbnb. I can write it here in the captions. So optimize your Airbnb gives you a great running start on what to read and what to do. Another good place to learn is actually on the Airbnb forum. There's a lot of good information on there, which is really good. I know Bigger Pockets, I think we're probably all familiar with Bigger Pockets. They have some good pieces on how to do a lot of these things. And also feel free to reach out to me. I think Daniel, my information is out there, so we can speak directly on how you can help implement some of these strategies. So then another question from April is, are corporate leasing companies leasing over 6 months then subletting to their core clients? Short answer is yes. So they'll take longer term leases within a building, and then they're turning around and renting them out 6 months, whatever, 90 days, 30 days, whatever it may be. So yeah, they're guaranteeing the long-term rent, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever their strategy as a company is, whatever their strategy is for the leases, and building up their inventory. Then they're turning around, they're chopping it up into little pieces, obviously with those 30, 60, 90, 6-month stays. They're kind of breaking them up that way. So that's exactly right and exactly what they're doing. And then, so going back, there's a couple, one of the things I want to kind of, as we're coming to a conclusion here, some of the issues that come along with Airbnbs outside of just the models, what about, and we've kind of hit on this, and the number one thing that I had written down was, what about the regulations? So you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on what's going on, because in this industry, things are moving really, really fast. So for example, in San Diego, they banned it outright. And then just a week later, they had, they turn around and cancel that because there was an uproar in people and what was going on. So they turn around, and because there were so many people doing it in San Diego, they had a great contingency of people to support it. I know Raleigh just had a whole house ban. New Orleans has some different rules and regulations where they were trying to ban the whole thing. So make sure that you're staying on top of it, or have a property manager who is focusing on it and giving you updates about what's going on to make sure that your units are staying within the regulatory rules, and just treat them as guidelines. Now, I'm not saying that all governments are getting it right. I think a lot of them are getting it wrong. They're not seeing the added benefit that it can be when done appropriately, and obviously the added tax basis that they can have. But just use it as a rule book. And if you want to have this, understand the rules and then just follow it, because I've got to stress this. You don't want, to make this investment and somebody come and turn around and say that you can't do it anymore. Or if you were chasing after a deal and you're underwriting as just an Airbnb and it made sense as an Airbnb, but maybe it doesn't cash flow as a long-term, then you're kind of in a sticky situation. So make sure that you're doing your own due diligence and staying on top of those things. Another question that comes up is, what about the parties? What about the noise? How do you help mitigate that? First, it comes with having, making sure that you're vetting the people that you're putting in your building, right? So the guests, make sure that you're vetting them. And then there's also there's a technology-based solution. The guys over at NoiseAware really well, and they have they call themselves the fire detector of noise. So that can help them detect the sound. If it goes above a certain decibel, it automatically reaches out to the guests and sends them a warning, right? So they know, what's going on. You set those quiet hours and you make sure that, your Airbnb and your Airbnb tenants are being good neighbors to your long-term tenants. So that's the same with, the next biggest thing that comes up for me and questions when I'm, looking to get into new apartment buildings is, we give background checks to all of our guests, or our tenants rather, excuse me. How do you guarantee that for, your tenants? And actually one thing that's new and great is we have, automatic background checks that come for all of our guests. So a company called Safely, work with them and they can, do automatic background checks. and they'll flag somebody if they come up on one of their 6 different things that they're checking for. And then that gives us the right to cancel on this person if we're not comfortable with who's coming and staying. And then access is another huge issue. One thing that we as short-term rental operators, we want to offer all the amenities that a lot of your beautiful apartments have. So that's going to come down to being very building specific. But a lot of times you have fobs or remote key access, and those can be solved with, because all of them, a lot of our locks, we can just see which ones are open, which ones are closed. We can change the codes automatically to make sure no one else can get in. So a lot of that can be solved with technology-based solutions. And then finally, one big concern is about the community as a whole within a building, that it's going to be, seen as too much of a negative, because a lot of times Airbnb, when you say Airbnb, it has a negative connotation. And like I mentioned before, that's because of bad operators, unfortunately. So how I always say that is it's how you market it, right? And it's how you want to build it out. So like I mentioned before, you can give good discounts to your tenants if they want to use it. And then also, I think there's a growing wave of, as the world, quote unquote, gets smaller, people enjoy meeting new people and being able to show them around. So, I'm going to assume you're going to have people within your building that want to be a host and like being a host, but maybe don't want to do all the work, but they like taking people out and doing those sorts of pieces. So you can even lean on a lot of your tenants to help there and pick up the slack and be great offerings to both your tenants and your guests. So it's a really cool thing that you can add and, build a community and a culture instead of it being this added piece. It's just an integral part of, your apartment community as a whole. So there's a couple of the pitfalls that come together. I saw another couple questions come through. Do the companies do 12-month corporate leases on single family as well? And do the corporate leases require you to furnish, or does the company? So the first part, do they do on single family as well? Yes, I've done that personally myself. Furnished, done it with single family rentals, and yeah, absolutely. It can be a piece of the single family market as well as just as much as it can be the apartments. And so absolutely. And do the corporate leases require you to furnish, or does the company, so you being the proverbial owner or, apartment manager, and corporate leases, in how I described it, they are typically furnishing it themselves because they have the cap on their rent, right? So they're guaranteeing to you, the owner, the rental amount. So they're going to furnish it and they're going to take all of that upside. So again, just who wants to hold that risk? That's who honestly incurs the expenses of furniture or utilities. And then again, kind of like all real estate, you're only bound by your own creativity. So if you want to work with within a different construct, another company that I have, Cozy B&B, we work within the apartment communities. We have sort of a flex between a lot of these models. So you can work within whatever constraints that you have, but typically a corporate lease, they're furnishing it and they're having all of the upside. So do we have any other questions? As we're coming to a close here, make sure to get in your questions at all. Danny, I don't know if you have any questions as we come into the final minutes of the presentation. All right. Do the companies require the host to furnish for the corporation? The corporation, they answered that. Josiah, what is the average days occupied for a nice place for 12 months? So occupancy is very market driven. because you can have, if you're down at the beach, right, if you're going to see huge swings in occupancy. So it all kind of depends. But if you're in more of an urban market where a lot of our units are, you're going to see more of a steady across the year. Here in Charlotte, where I usually underwrite around 73% occupancy on the year, but that can be different no matter what market that you're in. So there's some great resources that you can use if you want to find some of this data. And also one service that we have is we'll help underwrite some properties for you. But some great services that you can go to. There's Transparent. So Transparent is a data company for kind of all home sharing options. So they can help you with occupancy, ADR, average daily rate, and, gross revenue. They can help you with all of those pieces. And then also there's AirDNA. So the AIRDNA. So it's a company that can help you search all the way down to zip codes, like what that is. Use that source. Definitely use those resources as you're moving. Yeah, April said transparent.com. No, that is not correct. Give me one sec. I'll share it in the chat. So it's ctransparent.com, and I'll share that now, as well as airdna.co. So those are some great data-driven sites that you can use when you're wanting to, I'm assuming some of you guys are single family investors as well. So it can be applied across the board. So highly recommend using those. Josiah asked about my email. I can put my email in the chat. It also can be found on all of the conference marketing material. It's jake@airhospitality.com. So feel free to, any of your questions or anything like that, feel free to send them to me with any questions that you have, but happy to answer them for the group. So please, if you have any other questions, feel free to send those along. Yeah, so just send my email. Feel free to reach out at any time. And so one thing that I want to, really kind of drive home for when you're looking into doing an Airbnb is just know, and this is kind of me as an activist of the industry as a whole, make sure that you're doing it right. And what I mean by that is, and I alluded to it before, is, regulations come through because of bad instances. And one thing that you've been seeing a lot, and something to keep on the radar, is Airbnb parties, which is an unfortunate piece. And obviously you can bet a lot of that through some of the technology that we talked about, that I mentioned before. But you'll have people actually rent Airbnbs and then turn around and charge for people to come to a party. So you have to make sure that you're doing it right. You're investing in the technology, you're setting up the systems, you're checking on guests, and all of that plays into giving a good experience to both the end user, so your guest, but then also you're not forgetting about being a good neighbor, whether you're in a single family home or you're in an apartment. And as a whole, that helps the short-term rental community and private accommodations community grow, because the standards just keep growing. Now, I'm not saying that you can't list, your couch anymore, which, that's kind of like I said, you can't just list your airbed anymore. But the services have definitely grown, and the expectations to, the end user have grown exponentially. So you want to make sure that you're adding those extra things. You're having the nice furniture, you're leaving the bottles of water, you're going kind of above and beyond, because just as much as you are a real estate company, you're a hospitality company, and you want to make sure that you're, dealing with that appropriately. So you're a good steward of the industry, and also, being a good host obviously just leads to more and more, increased revenue for you, because Airbnb, what they'll do is, and just like any other search engine like Google, they have their own algorithm, and being a good host is, obviously top of their algorithm. So, and you're being an engaged host. So you're talking with your guests, you're updating your pricing, you're playing with your listing, you're always tweaking it and moving with it. That'll just help grow you through the search ranks and get you more visibility, which leads to more bookings, which leads to higher ADR. So all of it is really intertwined together. And one thing both operationally affects, your revenue. So you want to make sure you have good cleaning. Because cleaning is the biggest part. It's the most operationally intensive piece. So you want to make sure that that's under control, because that's the first thing that a client or a guest is going to see, is obviously cleanliness. And if somebody comes in and the place is clean and perfect, 9 times out of 10, the rest of the stay is going to be a good one, because they've already walked up and had that great experience right from the beginning. So if there's one tidbit I can leave you with on, the actual hosting piece, is just make sure that you're cleaning and that you're paying attention to those things, because that first impression are everything. They're one of the most important pieces, because everything else thereafter, you can, there's going to be slip ups along the way, but if you had that good first impression, you're going to be able to, still get that 5-star review. So kind of in conclusion, as we wrap it up here, make sure that you consider, so the 3 models that, I mentioned, whether it's the corporate rental, or if it's a revenue share, or you decide to invest in yourself, find the model that works for you, and make sure that you're talking with a good amount of managers within your area. Man, there might not be a whole lot, because this industry is obviously, this Airbnb management, as Airbnb is only 9 years old, there's not going to be too many. So make sure that you're vetting those that you're in. You're being hands-on, especially in the beginning, because the beginning is the most important, and you want to make sure that you're setting that good foundation. So find the strategy that works for you, and because at the end of the day, kind of like the topic of conversation is utilizing this to increase your NOI and increase your bottom line. So make sure that it's doing that. There's no point in going through all of this work and not reaping the benefits of it. So make sure that you're taking care of those pieces, and it's added as a great addition to your apartment, your community, and your overall investing strategy, because it can be a great piece. I have had the fortune of being a part of this industry for the past 3-4 years, and seeing on the investing side, seeing great growth and great positives from it. Met a lot of great people, both guests and in the industry. And then also as a company, seeing good growth, because people like that are on this call have had, have seen the value in it. So find the one that works for you. And like I said before, if you guys have any questions or want to talk about it, I actually saw an email come in already. So feel free to reach out to me. Again, email is jake@airhospitality.com. So feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And I hope that this was, this information was valuable to everybody. Again, if you have any more questions, please let me know. Happy to answer them, but make sure that this was great for you guys in total. So I appreciate being here.
Yeah, Jake, thank you so much for the insight. I think everybody, from the comments that we're seeing here in the chat, people really enjoyed the session. They have your contact information. If there are like 2 or 3 kind of takeaways that you can just recap us with on the importance of either what to know either before you buy or after you buy and stabilize, or kind of walk us through 2 or 3 of the important items when thinking about a short-term rental property investment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that goes back to one of the first things I said is when you're wanting to underwrite a property and you know that you want to add Airbnb as a piece, always make sure that it makes sense as a long-term, right? That you're cash flowing right from Jump Street without Airbnb and the short-term rentals being added. And then you're able to just see that extra little boost, right? From having that added cash flow of Airbnb, kind of treat it as, gravy, right? And always be protecting your downside. I'm not one to go tell people to go chasing after the yields of Airbnb. I know they're there, and I've seen them and I've lived them, but you always want to make sure, because of the unforeseen things like regulation that we've harped on, make sure that you're keeping control of all of those things. So, number one, first and foremost, I think that's the biggest piece. And the next piece is, have fun with it and make it, if you're going to do it, make it a fun part of your culture and, part of your brand. Cause that's where people want to stay. You don't stay with, Marriott or something because it has a stuffy brand or, the places aren't nice. So make sure that you're creating a space that people want to stay in. So I think there's two big takeaways for kind of the
Awesome.
listeners.
Yeah. And so as an owner or an investor, let's say I'm buying my first property and it's going to be a short-term rental.
Yep.
Should I expect from a time commitment perspective, either as a self-manager owner or as an owner paying a third-party manager? How much oversight do I need to do in both of those scenarios?
Yeah. So great question. So in the beginning, you're looking at a good process from an empty unit all the way up to, photos done and live. You're looking at anywhere from 3 weeks to 30 days. That's a pretty good process if you're able to, move like that and get pretty quick. So in the front end, that's probably your time commitment, is getting that all done between ordering furniture and what have you. They say about 5 to 8 hours a week if you're managing it yourself per unit. Now I think that goes down, obviously, if you have some sort of economies of scale, you implement technology, obviously you're going to see some decrease there. But that's usually what you can expect as an owner operator. And then if you're hiring a property manager that's doing their job, hopefully it's 0, right? Hopefully you're not having to do too much in the day-to-day. Now, when monthly statements go out, you're probably going to want to review that for, you're probably going to have 2 hours of review of those, maybe even less, to make sure that you're hitting the numbers that you want. And obviously, if you look at the bottom line and the numbers where you want it, that process is going to be much shorter. Now, if they're not where you want it to be, you might want to go through the statements a little bit further. But yeah, you're looking anywhere from probably under 5 hours a month if you're hiring a property manager, because that's what you're giving up, 15, 20, 25% of your revenue is for them to handle it. So they should be taking care of it.
Very good. One more very pointed question.
Yeah.
Accessing the unit perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What's your recommendation to owners for setting up locks for folks to access the property remotely without a key that a guest could not lose, and the training or amount of phone calls you may get about how to work the lock? Or let's talk about that real quick. Just how do guests get access? What's your best recommendation to minimize your time that you have to put into it?
Yep. So right off the bat, get rid of keys right away. Get rid of keys. Get rid of the potential of lockouts. And this might not be great to say, but you got to idiot-proof it, really. And you got to think about, on the worst possible way, how could somebody get into this? And you want to set up the systems to take care of that. So what I recommend are, regardless of brand, you want to have Z-Wave, so like the letter Z-Wave locks. And so without getting too technical, they work on a mesh network. So instead of the Wi-Fi enabled locks, which have to ping the Wi-Fi every time, which actually drains the battery really, really quickly, and that adds to your operational issues. Use Z-Wave locks because those can be managed remotely. And then also, you can change the locks remotely. You can see if it's unlocked. You can change the codes. And then there's also a lot of companies out there that will help you take care of this by automatically sending the code to the guest. And how it works is it'll only be live from their check-in. And then right at checkout, it goes, the code doesn't work anymore. So if they check out late, right, and they go and shut the door behind them, they cannot access the property anymore because that code will not work any longer. So that helps with access. So you're making sure that people that need to be in the home are in the home, and people that don't need to be aren't in the home. And you can give separate codes to cleaning staff so they can see, so you can see remotely, okay, my cleaning staff entered the property at 11:05. They left the property at 1 o'clock. Okay, that unit should be clean. So you get to see those pieces all remotely and all in one place.
Great. So again, just to recap for everyone listening, I think we had a connection interruption, but Jake's recommendation was a C-Wave lock or another lock that does not use a key. It could be a remote keypad or a actual keypad that you punch in at the physical door where you want to access. And Jake, I'm going to throw one last question at you.
Please, that's what we're here for.
How do you balance demanding guests and meeting their demands with keeping, or I should say, avoiding a bad review? So let's say you have a guest that is super high maintenance and they're calling you or messaging you or your manager 30 times and it's like they haven't even checked in yet. How do you manage, giving the guests what they need to know and, not giving in to their demands? If, the pillow wasn't on the bed correctly, I need a discount off my room.
Yep.
The owner and investors are really at the mercy of those reviews because a few bad reviews will impact your booking. So what's one tip for how you manage meeting the demands of your guests, not getting a negative review?
Yeah. So what I'll say to that in the most simplest form is managing expectations. So what I mean by that is, don't sell the Ritz-Carlton when you have a Motel 8, right? Or vice versa. And another moniker we can go on is, under promise, over deliver, and always give as much information up front as possible. So those you keep those things in perspective, it usually will lead to a good review and a seamless process, because if somebody understands what they're getting, what they're paying for, and those match, because that's a lot of times when the biggest difference happens is somebody's like, okay, I paid $300 a night for this, but they think they're getting $99 service. So you have to be realistic in your pricing and what you're giving, and making sure that they are in sync with each other. And one thing that we try and do is just give as much information up front. So they book, we're giving them a thank you for booking. You're going to get your information at this day, at this time. We'll give them the welcome book, which is an ebook, right? You're going to get that up front so they can see that. If you're inundating people with information or just showing them that they have access to all the information that they need, that really, really helps. And then overall, making sure the process is seamless as possible, that will really help. And so just making sure, thinking about the end user at all points, but in a word, managing expectations. So if you have a luxury unit.
The biggest things that I heard, transparency.
Yep.
Right? Transparent about what product you're offering, what your place is like, what the community is like around it, right? If you're not on the but you're 6 blocks away, don't try to sell it as a beachfront rental. And then the second I heard is communication. Over communicate with what a guest may need to know. I know there's ways you can save big long messages. So, an email or message that goes out, and here's the top 10 restaurants and the top 10 fitness activities. Here's the top 10 relaxation activities. Here's the top 10 shopping, and you just over communicate everything that you need to do. Jake, it has been tremendously helpful. I think the listeners and the audience here really enjoyed what you had to say. Just to recap, what is the best way for folks to reach out and connect with you? What's your company name, website, email, phone number? What's the best way for people?
Yeah, so a couple ways. Best email is Jake, Jake, at airhospitality.com. You can visit our website, airhospitality.com, and then more specifically for our apartments is the best way for that is Cozy B&B, COZBNB.com. Great access there, but feel free to reach out, email, and I can put those couple things into the chat so you guys can have it. And feel free, any questions that you have, happy to help. Danny, I was glad to be here today. Excited for the rest of the conference.
Jake, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on. Tremendous value. Check them out at airhospitality.com. Again, thank you. We're going to take a break here now. We've got a 15-minute break. Jake, if you want to go ahead and exit your video, we will be back at 11 a.m. Eastern. We will be going through the 4-point guide to profitable relationships with a wonderful, experienced investor and phenomenal friend of our groups, Ike Matumba. Very excited for him to come on. He'll have some excellent content for us on the 4-point guide to profitable relationships. So with that being said, we've got 14 minutes now until the top of the hour at 11 a.m. Eastern. Take a break. We'll be back with you, and we will kick things off with Ike and the Profitable Relationships Guide at 11.